J. Clayton Baum. Mr. Baum of Laredo was issued CPA certificate 5091 in 1960. He graduated from Texas Tech University in 1959 with a BBA in accounting and served 2 years in the U.S. Army. His early accounting career was with Ernst & Ernst in San Antonio and Laredo, followed by 8 years with the Laredo National Bank and 9 years with Union National Bank of Laredo. He joined Gonzalez Farias Guerra CPAs in 1983, then started his own firm in 1987. It has evolved over the years into his present firm of Canales, Garza, and Baum. John O. Clayton. Mr. Clayton of Fort Worth was issued CPA certificate 5109 in 1960. He earned a bachelor's degree in accounting from Texas Christian University in 1957 and an MBA from TCU in 1959. He then served 2 years in the U.S. Army. Mr. Clayton was self-employed in public accountancy in Fort Worth until his retirement 10 years ago. Galen Eugene Daughtry. Mr. Daughtry of Comanche was issued CPA certificate 5117 in 1960. He earned a BBA in accounting from Texas Tech that same year. He worked for Herschel Collings, public accountant, from 1959 to 1960, and then served 6 years in the U.S. Air Force. Mr. Daughtry then worked for Dow Chemical, Tracor, and the Group companies in energy research and development, and finally for Aetna and Harris Methodist Health Plan in managed healthcare finance and administration. His son, Brian Eugene Daughtry, is a professor of accountancy at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Edwin Walter Dentler. Mr. Dentler of Victoria was issued CPA certificate 5121 in 1960. He earned a bachelor's degree in accounting from Texas Lutheran University and served 4 years in the Air Force during the Korean conflict. He then practiced with Roloff, Nautek & Company in Victoria for 16 years before joining Victoria Bankshares, where he was CFO until his retirement in 1992. He is a past president of the Victoria chapter of the Texas Society of CPAs. J. Leon Funk. Mr. Funk of Dallas was issued CPA certificate 5131 in 1960. He served 4 years in the U.S. Air Force before attending the University of Denver, from which he earned a degree in accounting in 1956. He left public accounting with Coopers and Lybrand to go into industry in Dallas, and in 1982 began his own practice, with which he is still active. He has a nephew in Fort Worth who is also a CPA. Willard Lee Graves. Mr. Graves of White House was issued CPA certificate 5139 in 1960. He is a 1959 accounting graduate of the University of Texas at Austin and veteran of 4 years in the U.S. Air Force. He began his accounting career with Arthur Anderson in Houston, followed by Scurlock Oil Company. He then practiced accounting with the law firm Vincent & Elkins and, after 15 years, went into public practice with Tom Sewall until he retired in 2003. Jack Hales, Jr. Mr. Hales of New Braunfels was issued CPA certificate 5143 in 1960. He served in the U.S. Air Force from 1951 to 1953 before earning a degree in accounting and economics in 1957 from the University of Texas Pan American. He practiced with Hales, Bradford, and Allen CPAs and predecessor firms from 1957 until 1998 in Weslaco. Today is the first time the whole family has been together in 20 years. They came far away as Honolulu and Dalhart, as well as New Braunfels and San Antonio. James D. McInturf. Mr. McInturf of Wichita Falls was issued CPA certificate 5176 in 1960. He holds a degree in chemistry and zoology from Phillips College in Enid, Oklahoma, and an MBA from the University of Houston. After a grueling, and he made a joke about this, 2 years with the Marine Corps assigned in Honolulu, before beginning a new career as an accounting instructor in Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls in 1988. He retired in 1999. Eddie H. Mendel, Jr. Mr. Mendel of Houston was issued CPA Certificate 5185 in 1960. He graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 1955 with a degree in business and a major in accounting. He has practiced his entire career in Houston, first with the firm of C. Turner, McGuire & Company. In 1962, he began his own firm, and in 1976, he partnered with John Gaudet, and they practiced together until Mr. Gaudet's death last August. Mr. Mendel is still actively practicing in Houston. Chester Edwin Noack. Mr. Noack of Cyprus was issued CPA Certificate 5199 in 1960. He earned a degree in accounting from the University of Texas at Austin in 1949, but at age 20 was told he was too young to take the CPA exam, with which required him to be at least 21. He began a 35-year-long career with Gulf Oil, beginning with work in the oil fields before moving into accounting. He subsequently worked for the company that bought out Gulf Oil's tanker division and worked another 7 years. One son, Gene, is also a CPA. Mr. Noack used to serve as a monitor during the CPA exams in Galveston. Henry B. Pearson. Mr. Pearson of Dallas was issued CPA Certificate 5204 in 1960. He is a 1957 graduate of the University of Connecticut. He has served as president of the International Association of Practicing Accountants, as treasurer of the Texas Society, and as president of the Society's Dallas chapter. After 6 years of service in the U.S. Army Medical Corps, he practiced with his own firm in Dallas for most of his career and remains an associate of Candy and Shonwall CPAs who bought his firm. Rosemary Hayes Rifle. Mrs. Rifle of Sugarland was issued CPA Certificate of 5211 in 1960. She is a graduate of Rice. She practiced in local firms in Austin from 1958 to 1963, before moving to California. After returning to Texas in 1970, she was with national firms in Houston until 1978, when she became the tax partner for a series of local firms there. Since 1999, she has been a sole practitioner. She has a niece and a daughter who are CPAs. Harold D. Richardson. Mr. Richardson of Tyler was issued CPA Certificate 5212 in 1960. He earned a degree from North Texas University in August 1955 and served in the U.S. Army from April 1957 until April 1959. Mr. Richardson has practiced in the John Grimland firm in Midland, the QC Murphy firm in Longview, and the Huell Bone Stone firm in Longview. Jimmy L. Steele. Mr. Steele of Athens was issued CPA Certificate 5229 in 1960. He is a 1958 graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. He practiced accountancy for 18 years, Long and Chilton in Brownsville, and his own practice in Center for 23 years before retiring. And I understand that board member Carlos Brea was hired by Mr. Steele many years ago. David G. Stovall. Mr. Stovall of Fort Worth, who issued CPA Certificate 5230 in 1960. He is an accounting graduate of Baylor University. He practiced first with Ernst & Ernst before forming the firm of Stovall, Grandy, and Allen, in which he is still active. His firm deals mostly with financial institutions and the construction industry in Texas, Oregon, Washington, California, and Alaska. Emmett Earl Taylor. Mr. Taylor of Dallas was issued CPA Certificate 5233 in 1960. He is a 1954 graduate of Rice University with 2 years of service in the U.S. Army, 1955 to 1957, before and after which he practiced with Arthur Anderson. He practiced with Tenneco from 1961 until 1969, and with Dresser Industries, now Halliburton, from 1969 until he retired in 1996. Betty Davis Williams. Mrs. Williams of Austin was issued CPA Certificate 5251 in 1960. She got her first taste of accounting work as a bookkeeper for a College Station CPA firm. After taking night classes at A&M and later at the University of Corpus Christi, which is now part of the A&M system, she earned her degree in 1964 after She passed the CPA exam. She worked first with a national firm and has had her own firm in Austin for the past 25 years. Mrs. Williams was the first woman to receive the Texas Society's Meritorious Service Award, and the Austin chapter, of which she is a past president, has named its largest scholarship in her honor. John A. Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman of Corpus Christi was issued CPA Certificate 5256 in 1960. He is a 1956 graduate of Rice University who served 2 years in the Marine Corps. He practiced with Arthur Anderson in Houston for 2 years before going into corporate accounting in banking, oil and gas, real estate, mostly in Corpus Christi. He is a realtor with Caldwell Banker in Port Aransas. His daughter, Jan Simmons, is an Austin CPA. Thank you all very much for being here and honoring us with your presence. The 50-year licensees have a great deal of knowledge and experience to share with their new colleagues, and we hope they will continue to serve as role models and mentors. A word to the new licensees. After the ceremony, seek out your older associates. Visit with them. Give them your business card and get theirs. Stay in touch. There is much to learn from those who have been where you are now. Can we have a big round of applause for all of our 57 CPAs?
I know you did not come here today to hear me, but rather to get your certificate, so I shall be brief.